Hello and welcome to TIFF Rewind presented by Bell. I'm Cameron Bailey and I'm the Artistic Director and Co-Head here at TIFF. TIFF is located on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee. This territory is protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant and is home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We're grateful to be working on this land, and we're committed to learn and to share more of the stories of Indigenous people here. We encourage you to reflect on the land that you're on and its history. I want to thank everyone who makes what we do at TIFF possible. Our lead sponsor, Bell, our major sponsors, RBC, L'Oréal Paris, and Visa, as well as our major supporters, the Government of Canada, the Government of Ontario, and the City of Toronto. I'd also like to thank all of our members and donors for their continued support as well. This year, we're inviting audiences to take a walk down memory lane as part of TIFF Rewind, presented by Bell. It's a free series of digital talks with filmmakers and actors who revisit past film memories here at the festival. You can watch the talks with special guests on TIFF's social media channels and on TIFF's digital platforms during the festival. And with the Crave subscription, Canadian audiences can also stream the films on the Best of TIFF collection on Crave. Today, we're revisiting Precious, which screened at the festival as a gala on September 13th, 2009, and went on to win the People's Choice Award that year. It's my great pleasure to introduce our special guest, the director of Precious, Lee Daniels, and its star, Gabourey Sidibe. I'm here with the star of Precious, Gabourey Sidibe, and the director, Lee Daniels. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks, Cameron. Long time.
It has been a long time, coming up on 11 years. And I want to go back to that night to begin with. Sunday, September 13th, 2009. Definitely one of the biggest nights in TIFF's history. Big night for me professionally as well. You were both there at Roy Thomson Hall here in Toronto. You were joined by the rest of the cast, including Mariah Carey, Mary J. Blige, who did some music for the film, was there. Sapphire was there. And then your executive producers, Tyler Perry and Oprah, were there. I don't think we've ever had a bigger night in the 46-year history of our festival. And I got to say, one reason for me personally, my mother was in that room that night, and she passed a couple of years ago. But on that night, I think she knew the difference that a movie could make. Just the atmosphere was electric. So the first thing I want to say is thank you. And I want to ask you, what do you remember from bringing Precious to Toronto?
What do I remember? I remember that it was Toronto was, I don't know whether it was, how long was Toronto in?
It was pretty early. It was it was near the beginning.
September. So you had done Sundance, you'd done Cannes, and then Toronto, I think, was the next.
But as a film festival, I'm trying to remember how, I'm just trying to think, had I had any other films there before?
Shadowboxer was there.
Shadowboxer, yeah. So I thought, 9/11. I remember 9/11 with Shadowboxer. All of that happened there. So it was it felt like being home for sure. It was quite different from Shadowboxer for sure, and it just felt like more of an event. I thought that it was glamorous. I thought that it was. I couldn't believe by the time we had hit. Like, you're right, Gab. By the time we had hit Toronto, we were in full effect. This train had left the station and people were talking about the film, so it was an event. And I just remember just sort of being, I couldn't believe it, actually. I could not believe what was happening there. And it was I think it was really the height of where, it was at the height of Precious. It was the height of Precious, that moment right there, that night.
Yeah, it was right before, because the film came out in, I think, November. So we were still in that really exciting pocket of like, we have this thing coming out and some people have seen it, but everybody else wants to see it. And we were really sort of moving towards the premiere in a big way. I have like, the funny thing is like my memories of Toronto was that was the first time I'd met Oprah. And it was also the first time I was meeting Tyler. And so like I have very kind of like a little superficial sort of fanny memories of it. I remember it was Tyler Perry's birthday. And so Lionsgate had a dinner the night before in Toronto and given him this watch or something. And Oprah came and Oprah was like, there she is about me. And I was trying to hide from her. And it was very overwhelming. Those are the things I remember the most.
Why were you trying to hide from her though?
Oh, I try to hide from everybody. I get like the idea of meeting people that have sort of been in my own mental sort of ether is sometimes very overwhelming. And I was like, oh, Oprah wants to meet me. I'm going to immediately disappoint her. And so, so I tried to hide.
Well, I get it.
She found me.
Lee, let's go back from well before that point. The novel that Precious is based on was published in 1996 by Sapphire. It's called Push. It was 13 years before it became your film, Precious. How did you first come on to the project?
I don't remember. I forgot who gave me the book. I believe Ali Sheedy's mother was a lit agent in New York City. And she said this was a very important book. And I read it and it stuck to me like I had never read anything like it before. And I knew that I knew I had to be involved with the film. I didn't know that I wanted to direct the film at first because I had gotten such hard reviews and just like everybody hated, it seemed at that time, Shadowboxer. So I was so terrified. As a matter of fact, it premiered. But when I came back from Toronto the first time, I remember coming into New York City back home, and my driver passed me the New York Post, and it said, "The worst film of the year at Toronto Film Festival, Shadowboxer." And I burst into tears. I burst into tears and I said, "I'm never going to direct again. I'm never going to direct again." And so. When this came along, it was. I wanted Jeffrey Fletcher to originally. He was going to direct it.
Oh.
He had written a script, and it was clear early on that we had two different ideas of what the film was going to be. Early on, so I said, "I'm going to direct it," and I got the courage to direct again. And I'm glad I did. I'm really happy I did.
Look at you now.
So that was that, and it was and then we had no problem raising money for the film. It was a very quick call. We had two different financiers that wanted to finance the film, and we were blessed to have Sarah Siegel Magnus sort of, finance the film. It then went on to the casting process.
Tell us about that, because
it was so hard.
Finding You Precious was.
It was so hard, but it was so hard, But and I have Gabby Sidibe, I have Gabby's audition that I posted not long ago, like last year on my thing. She came in and it was God speaking. It was God. It was God speaking. My partner at the time, Billy Hopkins, who was also the casting director, said, "Stop, we have her." I was about to cast someone else that was an actress, and I was like, okay, I guess, but I felt that she was so much of the real thing. She was the real thing. And but Gabby was acting, it was like and yet she was just layered with layers upon layers of understanding this woman. And I burst into tears when I saw the audition, and it was like God speaking. That was it. And then the rest was sort of fun. Casting, her clan was a party. That was, and Gabby, listen. Also, I wasn't sober at that time. When we were working on it. So Gabby will really have a clearer memory of a lot of the stuff that was going on during the shoot, but. But prior to that, I can talk, I think, about, where we were up into that. And it was just in hindsight, I don't know. For me, it was a magical time that of not being afraid of loving the experience and joy.
Yeah. Gabby, I want to ask you about being cast as Precious and about the experience of working with Lee and this incredible cast of supporting actors as well. What was it like for you to come into this project? You were in college at the time, as I recall.
Oh, kind of. Yes. It's kind of a, from Lee says it's God. And from my perspective, it remains to be God. Like, it was very magical how everything sort of came together, very spiritual. So like, you're right, it came from the book Push. This very strange story. So yes, Lee was not originally going to direct it. At some point, Susan Batson was connected to direct it. And 5 years.
Susan Batson, not to interrupt Gabby, but Susan Batson was the acting coach. And I wanted her to direct it at first. That's a good team. You already remember things.
I remember because like the way so 5 years before I auditioned, the 5 years before I auditioned, Susan Batson actually, she approached my mother, who was a singer. My mom was a subway singer in New York. And she said, I have this movie to direct and I want you to star in it. I want you to play the role of the mother who abuses her daughter. And I think at that time they thought it was cool if the story was that this woman was a singer and her life was interrupted by her daughter, which is why she hates her so much. And my mom refused to audition. And I was like 19 at the time, and I was like, why are you in the subway if you're not trying to, like, I was kind of like, why would you? And she made me read the book so that I can understand why she was saying no to it. And then she said to me, I don't think they cast the girl yet. Do you want me to ask? And I was like, get out of my room, because I wasn't an actress, and it just didn't make any sense to me. So 5 years later, I had just gotten back into college, and somehow this audition came up, and I really wasn't an actress, but it all happened so fast where I really didn't even know where I was going when I left the house. I said, I had school at the same time, class at the same exact time as the audition. And I said, okay, the audition is uptown and school is downtown. And I left the house, and for whatever reason, I was made to cross the street to the uptown side of the street. And so I was like, okay, I must be here for a reason. I went to the audition. It was a Monday. He hired me on Wednesday. So
it just took 2 days.
And I was so surprised that by the end of he was gonna cast another girl who I didn't meet until the very last day of filming. I actually didn't know that there were so many other people in the running for it, and that he'd had like some sort of Precious camp of actors where they got voted off every week or something.
Like, and
I just bypassed that. I had no idea. And the weird thing is, like, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't realize how big it was. It really, at that moment, didn't mean anything. There was nothing for me to lose. And somehow I got it and I didn't lose it.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about the Precious camp, because that does remind me of these women, these young ladies that we were really auditioning real people. And so they were in tap class, we were dancing, and because at first I saw it as a musical also, a lot of the dream sequences I sort of put into the piece, and when Precious was having a bad experience, I would have her tap dance or sing, break out in a song, and we were just trying to figure out what the story, how to go into the fantasies at all, and so it was really an acting. I had an acting coach there who was also, I had a dance coach there and a singing coach there, and they were a group of Precious talents. When Gabby came in, there was just no question. The camp was over. We fired it. I mean, it was bye. We were just like, it was done. And Gabby isn't saying this about her mother. I can't remember everything about that, Gabby, but I do remember taking the subway often, Midtown, and seeing your mother sing, who sang as well, if not better, than Mahalia Jackson. So I in some kind of way, that was sort of that. I remember the Susan Batson and the and your mom of it all, and not understanding why she didn't want to play the role of Mary. I don't. Yeah.
The funny thing is, like, so the day that he gave me the part, that Wednesday, he was driving me home after Lee was driving me home, and we were in the car with his kids, who I think were like 11 at the time. They were so little. And he said, "So what do your parents do? Like, where are you from?" And I was like, "I'm from here. My mom's a singer." And he was like, "Where?" And I was like, "Well, she used to sing in the Cotton Club and she sings in the Subway." And he was like, "Your mom isn't Alice Tan Ridley, is it?" And I was like, "Yes, that's my mom." And he was like, I know her. I wanted her for my movie." And I was like, "Yes, I know." Like, that's because, like, I'm very good at not showing all of my cards until I need to. And he was flabbergasted. He actually had my mom's CD in his car. Wow. And in his office, and showed me. And like, it's strange how kismet it all is, and how it's very sliding doors around here.
This was meant to be.
But her mother, honestly, it was just had a voice that was just, woof. She was incredible.
Wow. Lee, I have to ask you how you were able to direct on this set that included not just Gabby, but Monique, Mariah Carey, Lenny Kravitz, Paula Patton, Sherry Shepherd. Incredible cast, big personalities, I would imagine. How did you actually keep this movie on track and going in the direction that you wanted to?
I didn't know, as you know, I was trying to find the story as we were directing it, as I was directing it. And I remember 10 days into, Gabby will tell you better, I think 2 weeks into it, I kept coming home at night, and I felt I didn't like the dailies. I didn't like the way the film looked. I didn't feel good about it. And I remember also that I had a white line producer and a white AD, and they had also read, that Shadowboxer was the worst film ever made that year, and they had zero respect for me or my vision or what it was. And they were New Yorkers that looked at this as a job. And I was like, I kept going home. I was like, this doesn't feel right. She doesn't look right. The set looks weird. And I felt like I was giving birth to an alien, literally. And so I did something that I now don't even know whether I would have the courage to do, but I fired everybody, and I shut it down. And
20 days in.
Really?
20 days in.
You shut the movie down.
Whole days in.
I was like, nope, you're not taking me down after Shadowboxer. Which, by the way, I loved, and I know you did, and thank you so much for having me.
I love Shadowboxer.
It's funny now, Shadowboxer is like this cult, so that everybody's like, whoa, Lee, I didn't know you did that one. But I was so nervous about making sure that it was that the film, that she was lit beautifully, that we were telling, and just like that it didn't feel right. And so I shut it down. My financier really believed in me. We didn't know that it was going to be the hit that it was going to be financially, like whether the financial hit that we were going to take because of it. I just blindly shut it down. And then we got back with a new DP, Andrew Dunn, who I met him. I'd seen the Madness of King George, and I loved the way that was shot. And he had shot that, and I loved The Bodyguard with Whitney Houston. But he had done that, and I asked him, I need your help because my DP is disrespectful. And they were all white guys, just rude, just disrespectful and really rude to what it was that I wanted to do, not knowing I was going to shut it all down. And because once the train is on the tracks, you just don't shut a movie down. It's just you deal with whatever it is, hell or high water, it just goes. And Andrew had read the script. He got on a plane and he really saved me. So for that, I've worked with him whenever I can. He's worked on The Butler, he worked on Empire, he worked on Billie Holiday for me and with me. And we have been confidants and friends for forever. But yeah, that's what happened.
Also, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand this then, but the original DP had no idea how to light my skin.
It was
That's
I think that was what was upsetting me. And he kept telling me that I was fine. And I
was not. Fine. I was green. Sometimes every now and then Lee would let me look at maybe a piece of a daily, or like he would let me see something, and I looked green. And I remember one time we were shooting under a bridge in a literal gutter, not set gutter, with like actual green slime on the ground, and I had to lay on the floor. One, that was the day that like a crane came in too fast and knocked me off the box. But then also I had to lay so that they can light me like on the ground. And I swear to you, I was on the ground for over an hour while they were trying to light me.
Wow.
So he had no idea how to light me, and even now, like my skin is my skin. Every now and then I might run into a DP that doesn't know, that doesn't know how to light the sort of variance of black and brown skin. And that was one of the major problems with him.
Yeah. But going back to your original question of how the cast, I was at the time very good friends with Monique. We had just finished a movie. We had just finished Shadowboxer together. And it was hilarity. I mean, we laughed most of throughout the shoot. I mean, Gabby, myself, and Monique literally laughed. There's a scene at the bottom of the stairs, a really famous scene where Monique is cursing Gabby out, and she's saying, "You ain't shit. You ain't never gonna be shit. I should have aborted you." That famous moment there. And at the top of it, you cut to Gabby, and she is at the top of the stairs, just sort of standing there. And then if you come back to Monique really quick, I cut back to Monique. There's a moment where she just says, "You know what?" And she turns. And so, because she's so disgusted. So, a black woman, when she turns, you're in trouble. So she turns, right? So everybody says, "Oh my God, that moment was so real. How did you get her to do that?" And I said, she was turning because she was laughing at Gabby. Because Gabby was at the top of the stairs, like doing the funky chicken, just doing everything to get Monique break. Because what the words out of her mouth were so unbelievable that you could only laugh. And Gabby, and I think that's how we got through all of it, because it was just so unbelievable to all three of us.
Yeah.
That we could only laugh at it. So there's a moment where in that moment when she turns like this, you know what? In that moment,
I think you trying me?
I think you trying me? Yeah. She had to turn because she was laughing. It was an incredible experience. All of the actors, Mariah, Lenny, these are friends of mine. They're one of my best friends. And so they came on to support me, because there really weren't stars in the film. And I really wanted people that popped, that, I knew the importance of the selling of the film. And so, and then Sherry Shepherd, it's me. The film is really me at my core. When I look back at the humor and at the it's my soul. And they were just acting out, and we were crazy enough to act out everything that was going on in my head, and understanding just the nuance. I think that it just is when everything works, when you understand pain, Black pain, we're able to laugh at it. When we played the film for the very first time at the at Magic Johnson Theater in Harlem.
And my mom went.
Yes. It literally played like a comedy. People were laughing.
There's a lot of humor. There's pain and the humor together, and sometimes people will forget about the parts that are hilarious in the movie. When you go back to the stove and the pig feet, and I mean, to me, that's like a gag line. I mean, I just think, oh my God, she's being terrorized by food on the stove, you know?
And she says, eat. So it was just like me, like, and then, but when we played it at Sundance, and when we played it at Toronto, it was not. You could hear a pin drop.
Yeah.
Like white people, this was serious.
Yeah.
But Black people understood it and could only laugh at the irony of the realness, because we had never been served realness in that way before. And so yeah. Yeah.
I want to jump ahead now to the Sundance Film Festival. I was in the room at the Eccles Theater when your film premiered. And I remember being blown away by the film, really with it every moment, every little detail of the color and the movement and the fantasy sequences. But then I don't even know if this is real or if I just kind of fantasized it, but I remember the Q&A, and you did the Q&A for that film, and you got a phone call during the Q&A. You were up at the front of the theater and somebody called. Now, who was on the phone? Do you remember that?
Oprah.
That's right.
And I mean, look, here's the thing. I didn't think that, you have to understand, I had just been, traumatized by the shadow boxer hate that was out there. And a lot of white people didn't get it. And I was so happy and so thankful to you, Cameron, for embracing the work for what it was, understanding my artist, and really encouraging me to continue on as an artist. It was really, you were one of the few, because there weren't any Black people out there that really got the voice and where my head was at. So I get emotional right now thinking about that, because I think that now when you look at critics and such, they studio executives and critics, and they don't view the world from our lens. So they choose to honor certain Black projects that they think are deemed to be, not really understanding you have no right to judge us. You have no right to judge us, because you haven't walked in our shoes. You haven't eaten the fried chicken or the pig's feet to understand what our cinema is. And so I don't know. I just but anyway. So you were I lost my train of thought. We were asking me something.
Oprah calls you when you're.
Oh yeah. So anyway, so I didn't even think I was worthy to be in there at the time. It was all a trip, but blocked calls at that time meant find either drug dealers or financiers. And so I answered because it was one of the two, and I had to get my.
Either way, it's gonna be good news.
It's gonna be good. And it wasn't. It was Oprah, and she was like, "Oh, I'm being. I don't know. And she said, "What are you doing?" She says, "Oprah Winfrey." I said, "Huh?" She said, "Yeah. I just want to tell you I love your movie. What are you doing?" I said, "I'm on a panel. I'm about to walk up and." She says, "Well, why are you on the phone with me?" I said,
You were drugs.
All right, text me or something. I forget what I said, but yeah, that was
a wild moment. And of course, your movie won the Audience Award and the Grand Jury Prize for Best Drama at Sundance, and you just skyrocketed from there. It's incredible.
And Best Director.
And Best Director. That's right.
Crazy. Trifecta.
That's right. Which I hope you sent directly to the New York Post.
Yeah. It was crazy. It was a crazy time. I think that what that movie did, it opened up. I didn't even know that it was going to do we didn't know what we were doing. We were just having fun, Gabby and I and Monique and all of us. We were just trying to tell a great story that we knew that was important we knew somewhere it was culturally important to us. Yeah. And, I don't think that we understood what it was going to be. And I don't think you go out we certainly didn't think we was getting nominated. If you told me that Gabby was going to get nominated for this, I would go, huh? Or Monique was going to win for it, I would go, huh? We it wasn't about that, you know, and it was, we were really a family. And I think that that's part of what made it so special, you know, that, that Gabby blindly followed me. She would have jumped. She did. She jumped off the cliff.
Oh my God. Remember that time you almost made me actually breastfeed a baby? Honestly, that was the wildest thing I've ever been a part of. Ever.
But you didn't, Gabby, did you?
I didn't because I started crying hysterically. And you were like, oh, stop it, girl. I remember everything. I also did know that he wasn't sober.
Really breastfeed? I didn't have you breastfeeding.
You almost did. You only didn't because I started. We were in the hospital. We had a whole floor to ourselves. And you were like, you came over, you go, hey, really seriously, very seriously, Gabby, listen to me. How do you feel about breastfeeding the baby? And I was like 24. And I was like, I can't. This is not my baby. It's not my baby. And he was like, girl, stop, fine. And then he got the mother of the baby to breastfeed, which is why, like, and there's a scene where you see the titty, and it's vastly different than my own because of that. So yes,
because you wouldn't breastfeed the baby.
Because I was terrified of the idea of it.
And also with Mariah, it was the same way. You know, I think that I tricked her. Helen Mirren was going to play this role, and Helen had gotten a big job. I think the Queen or something. She gotten a big one, and literally called me days before because she'd started in Shadowboxer for me, and she says, I can't. And I said, Mariah, I have something for you, but you can't wear makeup. Because I knew we're friends, and I said, but you can't wear makeup, and I think it's going to, and she had actually, that was one of the few books that she read. She said, Lee, and I don't know whether I should say this, but I don't mind, because I think she said it publicly. She'd read 2 books, the Bible and Push by Sapphire. And yeah. So, and so she was like so honored to be a part of it. And
she's incredible.
It was just great. She's incredible in it because she, again, understood the importance of where Gabby and Monique and myself, she lost herself. And she lost herself because she understood that in that moment, God was working. I'll get emotional again. God was working in a way that, it rarely happens. That was a turning point in my career to know that I was able to evoke those types of performances from people. Like we were all on the same, not page, not sentence. We were on the same syllable.
Wow. You've both gone on to incredible things, but I think Precious will always remain a high point for your careers, for Black cinema, for just changing the conversation in so many ways. And I just want to thank you both for making this incredible film, for bringing it to Toronto, and just for the chance to talk about it 11 years later. Really appreciate it. Love talking with you both. Thank you.
We love you, Cameron.
Thank you. Thank you, Cameron.
Thank you. Lee Daniels, Gabourey Sidibe, thank you for this wonderful conversation. And if you're here in Canada, you can head over to Crave to watch Precious.